This is the Lit Podcast with me, Dr. Derek Su, where we explore purpose, potential, and the human condition, and hopefully uncover some new ways of being and doing in the process. Jump in and join me for a deep dive with my special guests each and every episode for some revelatory, stimulating, and sometimes scintillating conversation. Alright, it's time to get lit. Let's do this. Hi, and welcome to the second episode of Lit, taking you on a tantalizing, audible journey with fascinating guests sharing their insights, unique experiences, and stories on life and what it means to be human. I don't know if you can tell, but I really love this stuff. And just a heads up, everything we discuss, including the transcript, show notes, links, and contact info, plus bonus material like photos and videos, can be found at the podcast episode page at livinglit.life. Do check it out for the full Lit experience. Now, in this episode, we are chatting with an old friend of mine, Dr. Kris Kerr. He's a consultant medical specialist in Brisbane and an in-house certified trainer of the process communication model, which teaches a set of skills that build tools for emotional intelligence, flexible communication, conflict management, and mindfulness. His passion project in PCM is the theory of why humans self-sabotage. He's also a professional dancer, dance instructor, and holds 4 music diplomas in piano and music theory composition. Crazy stuff. His proudest achievements so far, in no particular order, include performing as a lead featured dance artist in Strictly Gershwin in Australia and the USA, training over 400 people in the process communication model, becoming a reformed high achiever, and daring to lead an authentic life without conforming to external expectations. Something I feel we have probably all struggled with at some stage. This was definitely the most in-depth conversation I've ever had with Kris. It was incredibly enlightening. And besides sharing his extraordinary story from dance to medicine and back, we cover some really important topics, including procrastination, motivation and burnout, the power of discipline and visualization, dealing with grief and learning to say no, understanding the difference between humans, and thus how to communicate in a way so people really get you, concept of recharging your batteries, and probably the most life-changing and important share is when we discuss the concept of self-sabotage and defending your boundaries. Make sure you don't miss that part. On a lighter note, Kris shares a surprising story of how he's managed to live out his childhood dream in his 40s. It was awesome having Kris over for the podcast, and I hope his stories and insights will speak to you as much as they did me. And above all, I hope you feel his authenticity and the grace with which he lives his truth. Enjoy. Today, I have a very special guest here, Kris Kerr, Dr. Kris Kerr, a former medical colleague, medical student friend. So we've known each other for how many years?
Well, since the last millennium. We would have met in first year, so 1991.
Yeah, it's a very long time ago. Wow, that is 30 years ago.
Hang on. Yes, that's crazy.
It is very crazy.
I just realised. And probably around about this time.
Yeah,
This could be our friendiversary, 30-year friendiversary, right today.
Yeah, it'll be showing up on Facebook.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If it was it was around back then.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, we've got so many things to cover here. I'm really excited.
Thank you.
Even when I first met you, you came across as someone that was very, I would say, very disciplined person.
Yeah.
And I guess, one of the earliest memories I actually have or what I can remember is that you were a dancer before you actually got into medicine.
Yes.
And that was actually something you were deciding between whether you should go the dancing route or the medical route.
Absolutely. That was a big deal. Shall I chat a bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, the other thing I'll just throw in there was that I remember seeing photos. Or maybe I just conjured up this image, but I remember that you had like rooms of all the medals and the trophies.
Well, they're at my mum's house. So
yes, they've got a whole room just for that,
like the shrine. Yeah, yeah. I lived and breathed dance and music right from a very young age, and My grandmother was a music teacher, so I was learning piano in the womb, really, because I'm pretty sure my mum would have been over their family home and like grandma would have been teaching and I would have been listening to all this. And I strongly believe that fetuses pick up far more than we realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do remember that thing, but I remember when you bring this up, I remember there was this news story about if you played The Neighbours.
Yeah, right.
It had some kind of an effect.
Oh, I strongly
so
believe
totally.
that, yeah. One of my earliest memories is going to a library when I was 2, maybe, and I found a book which was hand illustrated, but it had male and female dancers in it. So I remember pointing to the man who was wearing this tunic and black tights, and I think it was like a Swan Lake kind of thing. And I said to my mum, I want to do this. Like, I really knew that. And I think for me, I got a sense from the way that he was holding his body like in a ballet pose that it was very expressive. And I was always quite an emotional child, not outwardly, but I felt emotions deeply. Like that's been with me since a young kid. So dance fitted in really well with me because it's movement to music, and for me anyway, was expressing emotions through music in a way that just made a lot of sense to me.
How old were you when you saw this book?
2.
2?
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
Well, I can remember that because I can also remember my first ballet class, which was on my 3rd birthday. So this is very clear to me about going there. And I had been wanting to learn, but they had a rule that you had to be 3. And so I used to peer underneath the little crack in the sliding wooden door when my sister was having classes, sort of waiting for her, and I was itching to get there and be amongst it.
Were you trying to copy at that time, or you were just watching?
I don't remember copying. I think, and I don't think I would have been because I've got a very vivid, rich inner world, and so I've always had that. So I could look under a door and imagine myself doing things, and I would never have had to have moved.
Yeah,
I would have had the same experience just by looking.
Yes,
and yeah, so. Dance and music really preoccupied a lot of my thoughts, and my hopes and dreams were geared around that of what I would be doing in an adult life. I didn't really have the 12 steps in mind, but that was what I was envisaging. And then I was coincidentally doing well at school, and I liked learning, but I never focused on school. I never studied. I did my assignments and put a lot of pride in them, but I was not that kid who was studying before exams, ever. And in our final year of high school, I started to, I guess, look with adult eyes or early adult eyes about what the industry might be like, and I started to be unclear about how to get the 12 steps to happen, or the 20 steps, or the 50 steps. There wasn't a clear pathway for me. And I stalled and was probably one of the only kids that ever went to the guidance counsellor that was at school. But I did. I went and I said, I feel lost. I've wanted to pursue dance and music all through my life, and I have all this training and ability and was doing very, very well in that field. I just feel like it's not right for me for some reason. I feel lost. And the guidance counsellor said, what else do you like to do? And I said, well, I like the idea of helping people and understanding how people tick, I guess. And so she advised me to see a psychologist at the university, not for the purpose of having psychotherapy, but for the purpose of what is it like to be a psychologist. And then that psychologist said, how are you doing in school? She was just checking if I would have enough grades to get in. And I said, well, I'm ducks at my school. And she just put a pen down and said, well, you should go to medical school to be a psychiatrist because it will give you some more options with prescribing medication. And that was it. That happened a week before we had to fill out our QTAC form. I think it was called back then, that thing where you tick the box of what you're going to be in life. And so very suddenly I just completely changed tack, and my family were surprised. I was even surprised. And there I was, August grade 12, suddenly I was thinking I'm going to do something academic. And I turned up to medical school really only having been to a doctor myself once. I really knew nothing about anything. And I thought that we would stream right from the get-go. So I thought to be a psychiatrist, I would turn up and I'd do the 6 years of medical school as a psychiatry medical student. So when they took us to the dissection labs,
Right, and we were doing cockroaches and
yeah, yeah, and humans, like human bodies, and I was like, no, like I'm in the psych stream, and I was like, no, there's no stream. So I had so little information about it. I really didn't understand what would be happening. I didn't know any of the terms. I hadn't even heard of very basic words, apart from what I learned in grade 12 biology, but I was really behind so far as the whole concept of it. And it took me about 6 months to just feel like I was on the same page as people. Yeah.
I'm curious, when you made this decision to go, okay, medicine instead of dance, I'm sure, given that you were very successful as a dancer in competitions and all that, all your dance instructors, weren't they trying to say, no, you can do this, you can do that, or what was their input into this whole process?
Well, curiously, I have a little bit of shame about this in a way, but I actually just stopped completely, right cold turkey. I never even went to see my teachers to say goodbye.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You never brought this up that you're not sure what you wanted to do?
No.
And they never really suggested that this was a path?
They had no idea. And I essentially, it was almost, this is actually a pathological response, I realize that now, but I just completely cut myself off from that scene altogether and proceeded to have a profound grief reaction for about 6 months about that whole experience. I would do things so much differently now,
Yeah, right.
If I go back 30 years. But that is what I did. So no one really had a chance to say, what are you doing? Because I almost like cut communication. I felt like it was the only way I could go on the new path, because it was almost like all my blood supply was like, if that was the placenta and I was the baby, like I was so connected to that world. Yes. I had to cut myself off to survive. Otherwise, I don't know. It would have been so difficult for me. And I didn't dance at all in any shape or form for 4 years until I decided to look for a part-time job to earn some money in medical school. And I started teaching then. But no, I just couldn't. I actually couldn't face doing a class or seeing anyone from that industry. It's pretty bad that I did that, but I did it. Yeah.
You mentioned it's a pathological response.
Yeah.
What? How would you define that?
Well, I as a 16-year-old, I didn't know how to grieve healthily.
Okay.
I learnt that later in life. So I can look back now and see that was an abnormal grief reaction.
Right.
I know grieving. And I knew this even from a kid. Like if I had a best friend in grade 3 at school and I found out they were leaving to move to a different state, I wouldn't be able to I just couldn't even talk to them. I didn't know how to grieve. Right. And so my instinct was I had to just imagine that didn't exist in my life. It was the only way I knew how to get around that.
It's kind of dissociate kind of.
I'd almost just like pretend, like put blinkers on, I would say. I used to do that a lot with anything that was involved sadness. I would just naturally do that because I didn't really have the skills to grieve. And I probably only learnt that about myself when I started to train the model that I teach that we were talking about just before.
Yes, we'll get to that. Definitely get to that. So, okay, so that's great. So you did get back into something, and you just mentioned that you didn't do anything until 4th year. And that just made me think, that's interesting, because I'm sure that the Med Review would have loved having you on board.
I never.
Did you ever do it?
No, and I didn't. I didn't want to be involved. I didn't actually want to be seen by people dancing. I was happy to teach behind the scenes, but it was almost like I was trying to forget that I used to do that.
Yeah.
It's a pathological grief reaction. Like I can look back now and think all these things I could have done effectively, but I just didn't even want to be involved in the Med Review at all. And sidebar, 6 months into medical school, I finally got the study bug, which probably some people had in high school. Like I had never studied.
Right.
And I became like an uber nerd. And the thought of having time off to prepare for the Med Review would have just been an anathema.
That would have been a distraction. That's
Completely.
actually what I want to talk about, because for me, my pattern in most of my life has been a procrastination pattern. I would not do anything until the last thing. It sounded like that you probably paid attention in class when you were in primary school and high school, and that's why you're able to like do really well. Because
the concepts.
Whereas me, I'd play up in school. I wouldn't focus, and then I won't do anything until the night before, or whatever. And I remember going through like our med, what do they call those exam periods?
SWOT-FAC, I think.
Yeah, SWOT-FAC.
Yeah.
I remember going through those SWOT-FAC things, and I'd just have like multiple nights no sleep, just on coffee.
Yeah, okay. So this says a lot about the different ways that we are motivated effectively. So, and, you know, we can talk about the power of procrastination in this, but it sounds to me like adrenaline is a very powerful motivator for you.
Yeah, that's definitely something that has been a force in my life in terms of I need that. I like that deadline kind of a thing and trying to get stuff done in a very short period of time. Not very effective, and that's why I always looked. It can be in certain things, but I think for study, certain things require consistency, exercise, all that kind of. You can't cram exercise. And so I always really looked up to you because I saw that you always stayed on top of things, and you always made sure that you were up, like, you know, whatever we studied that day, you'd make sure you understood it all, so that you wouldn't be like me the night before trying to make sense of all the data or whatever. Tell me about how you got the study bug. What was it that kind of like got into you?
I think it was. It was not a malicious comment at all. It was more like my dad made a whimsical statement. My dad is a very deeply reflective person, and so he kind of shares his reflections out loud a little bit. And I got my results at the end of semester 1, and I got like credits or 5s, pretty much along the board, which is not bad for us. I mean, I was trying to study, but I didn't know how. And I shared my results with my family, and my dad said, "Oh, I had imagined you would get something like that." And there was something about hearing that where I thought, oh, I wonder why he didn't imagine I would do more. And I think it's actually fair that he would imagine that, because I wasn't effectively studying. I was trying, but I didn't really know how. And so it's actually a reasonable statement, but I decided to set myself a goal of like, well, what would it be like if I did study? And this is a good and bad thing. So you can say you were admiring me for being disciplined, but my goal was so strict that if I didn't get a high distinction, that was a fail.
Sure.
So I moved the bar so far, and because that was where my bar was, I effectively I put myself in a prison of study, which I was very happily doing at the time. And I guess I rapidly realized that this was a repetition concept in the first 3 years of medical school. There was so much knowledge to acquire. Finding patterns, which is what I excelled at all through my childhood, wasn't going to be enough because there were too many links, too many dots to link.
Right.
So I made a disciplined note of turning up to every lecture, writing down all the facts, and then that evening I would create diagrams or some kind of summaries that would make sense to me, knowing that if I looked at them by the end of the week, I could rapidly look at it and understand the lecture.
Yep.
And so I did this for the next 5.5 years of medical school, exactly the same thing. I went home and I summarized it in some way that day while it was still fresh in my mind so that I could refer to it later. And then at the end of every week, I went through the notes for the week. And then at the end of every month, I went through all the notes for the end of the month.
That is brilliant. Did you realize that those time periods that you're talking about, I'm pretty sure that that's what's been studied as being effective in how to recall and memorize, is that you review the stuff on the same day, maybe the next day, within a week, within a month, and then it's pretty much locked into your long term.
And it was for me, and almost to the point where, you know, because you might remember in medical school there was lectures and then tutorials and sometimes assignments or whatever. So we did the same concept a few different ways, and so having attended the lecture or reading about the lecture beforehand and then turning up, by the time I got to the tutorial, I was sort of wondering why we were doing it because
you already understood it.
I felt like, well, I not only understood it, but I almost had a summary of it so that I could have given the tutorial.
Yes, you could have been.
I'm not being arrogant, but really, I really was that informed about the subject in as much as you could be without actually having practice as a doctor. You know, and so I just. Yeah, it's interesting. People have said that it works. It worked for me. Yeah. I think the key is to find what works for me. Something that, I can tell just from knowing you and knowing me is that on a spectrum, I would be far more internally motivated than you.
Right.
But you'd be far more externally motivated than me. And they're both good things.
Just got to know how to tweak it.
Well, and also I agree with you that a long haul 6-year medical school commitment is tough if you're externally motivated because the goal is so far away, which suits internally motivated people because they actually have a 6-year pig in mud ecstasy where they can roll around in their studies and feel amazing because they're getting a battery charge by either ticking things off a list or realizing they're dedicating themselves to something. Like, it's all motivational. But if you're externally motivated by something like an adrenaline rush or something creative or spontaneous or whatever, that's a long adrenaline rush, you know? Like, it's like base jumping for 6 years. That's very difficult to maintain, like physiologically.
Yeah.
And so that's why you would have naturally felt like the instinct would have been to delay study and then get the adrenaline to study and complete, because that would have been how you coped.
I mean, that's part of the reason. I think one of the other reasons was at that particular time I wasn't really into it.
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
that had a huge impact.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I was interested. I was fascinated by the human body. I would say it could have been any subject, and because I became an I'm going to say achievement junkie, but it was so private. Like, I withheld my results in medical school. I never told anyone what I did. It wasn't in the paper. I worked out a way that if you didn't show your student ID in one exam, they wouldn't publish your results.
Oh, really?
I did that.
Because I remember after every exam, everyone would go look in the paper to find their results.
Mine was never there.
Oh, all right. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, a few of my closest friends knew, and if we were sitting in the same tutorial, they kind of would have got an idea that I was knowing what was going on, but I never had my results published. So my achievement junkiness was not so anyone else could see, but I felt probably like I wouldn't have been enough of a person if I didn't reach my goals. And that, I think, is the problem if you're super internally motivated. If you set yourself these goals which are really difficult and you don't know how to grieve, right? Then the only choice is to succeed at these impossible tasks. Getting our first class honours in medical school was a shitload of work, right?
Oh, totally. No, yeah. I saw that. You were very dedicated.
But I was putting a lot of pressure on myself because the option was the other choice would have been to not get the high distinctions, which was to me a fail, and I didn't know how to experience loss or grief, so I just wasn't able to accept that was an option, and so. This is why if I went on a driving trip with some of my friends, I would study in the back seat of the car. I would study all through the holidays for the next year. Like, wow. I wouldn't say that was a good thing necessarily looking back, but that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It got your result and it worked for you. I'm thinking that this level of discipline, you obviously displayed that and did that also when you did dancing, because obviously that required a lot of continuous discipline, practice.
Yeah, so I was fortunate. I did most of my dance education in Townsville and then moved to Brisbane for the last 2 years. The dance school I went to in Townsville, they had a scholarship for boys, so for classical ballet at least, there was no cost. So it was great. My family wasn't rolling in money, so I could attend all these classes. And so there was the opportunity for repetition was there with the classes. And then being someone who was very good at visualizing things in my mind, I would do a lot of extra practice just by lying on my floor of my bedroom with the lights out, imagining my body doing different things.
Wow.
And so when it came to doing the movement, I had rehearsed it in my mind so many times that I knew kinetically how to do things.
How much time would you actually spend like visualizing in your bed compared to actually doing it? Like what percentage?
80% visual, 20% doing.
Wow.
Like a lot of it was visual.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because, there have been studies where they've done these tests, like with basketballers or
yes,
sports people.
I've read those.
Yeah, where they did actual physical practice. There's one group just physical, another group with physical and mental.
Yeah.
And then I think that they had another variation, but basically they found the people that had the visual component did a lot better.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree that if you looked at a population that would work, if you kind of flushed out the dynamics of each group, there would be outliers. And there would be some people who just did nothing for them. And in fact, they might have got frustrated that they weren't at the gym or something like that. There will be some people that just cannot sit in a room in the dark by themselves and imagine shooting a hoop. They can't. And then there are some people, it's like, oh my gosh, I could do this for 12 hours a day. And then I can walk around the hoop in my mind and I can imagine my legs stretching at the right time and the kind of stillness I'll have when I shoot. So I do think it's really up to the individual to work out what works for them.
Yeah.
Not just to read a book and go, oh, I'm supposed to read, I'm going to, that guy in that podcast said he visualized 80% of his time, so now I'm going to do that because that's how he succeeded. No, it just worked for me.
Yeah.
And I always knew it did, I guess, because I did succeed. And I said, well, these are the succeed in inverted commas if you can't see this, like whatever success means, like I was hitting goals.
Yeah.
And it worked for me, but that came so naturally to me. No one ever said go in your room, go and sit in your room and reflect about your dance.
Okay, so it's very intuitive.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that you got from your parents or anything like that?
Look, I may have the concept of reflection I might have got from my dad because he's very introspective, and so he used to sit for hours on the balcony looking out at the stars at night, and so maybe I saw him doing that, and I mean, I didn't really know what he was doing because he didn't tell me, but it's possible, nature and nurture, it's possible I saw a little bit of that happening. But no, I genuinely think I was just that kind of kid. I didn't play outside much because I was playing in my head.
Yeah.
I was. And there was nothing adrenaline junkie about it for me. So we were different kids, right?
Totally.
So, yeah. Derek's like, so different.
That's so interesting. So your parents really, you were just an internally driven person, and you didn't really need anyone to really guide you or help you be disciplined. You just kind of had a natural interest and you just went for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you worked it out.
Yeah, I would say I needed parenting for some other things. I was very bad at setting boundaries with other people. I didn't know how to do that. I couldn't say no to people. I was worried about things being too hostile if I said no, and they'd be upset and whatever. And my mum, I would say, was like a very gregarious and kind lioness. Like, she was very protective of me to the point where if she saw that someone was not taking advantage of me necessarily, but doing the wrong thing by me or whatever, she would swoop in. And I didn't know how to defend myself against situations like that. So that's what I needed parenting for, I guess.
Right.
Was to actually have a protector, because I just was that was something I learned later on about how to say no. That's not okay with me. And actually to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And not like, oh my gosh, they're going to feel so bad. It's actually okay, Kris, to have boundaries. I learned that years later. Yeah, but so no one ever said like study. No, I definitely can remember. My mum knew I had a very active mind, and she used to give me little activity books to fill out, even before school. And I used to love doing these things, and perhaps I don't even remember this so much, but if I showed her that I'd finished, she might have said, oh, good boy. I don't know. There might have been some kind of message that, oh, if you achieve, I'm a good boy.
Right.
I might have learnt that somehow, but it definitely was not a forced thing. No one ever said to me, go and study. There was no pressure on me to succeed academically or even in any way. No, it never came up.
Wow.
And I know other kids had very different experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, I actually had the freedom just to explore my creativity, and I was just naturally a kind / shy child at school who did well, and so I don't know if there was a lot of effort necessary to keep me on a track, because I was just there already.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's come back to we've finished medical. You're working as a doctor.
Oh, okay, yes.
And now you've what made you move into pathology? Because that's a very I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those of you that don't understand, I think a lot of people think medical school, you're either a GP or a surgeon, and they kind of don't even maybe realize there's other things. And that's okay, because I know nothing about lots of other industries. So, and if you know more than that, then forgive me for assuming anything. But so a pathologist is a medical doctor, a medical specialist, whose specialty, in my case, is looking down a microscope, diagnosing and confirming different disease processes, writing reports so that other medical colleagues can decide on the appropriate way to navigate the patient's healthcare. And in some cases, it's actually individualistic, where we can say this cancer will or won't respond to that drug. So that kind of thing. Pathology was a subject in medical school, almost a bit like a science, I'd say. I don't know whether many people studied it and thought, well, that's a career path. And I never really thought about that too, because I even think we were groomed to either be GPs or surgeons or physicians. Like they were the kind of the standard three things that people talked about a lot from mentors and tutors. And so, you know, I'm cast out into the wild as an intern in a hospital, and then I actually felt a bit like a round peg in a square hole the entire time. I probably felt like that in medical school too, but because I was just so much into the studying that I didn't really notice. But looking around, I just felt like I didn't belong. And progressively, I just felt very foreign in that role as a human, and kind of like the whole trapped in the wrong body kind of concept, you know, like trapped in the wrong career, I guess. This whole concept of going to work every day and walking around the wards, it just didn't sit well with me at all. And there were two pathologists in the hospital that I worked at who I would see at clinical pathological meetings, and sometimes I would take specimens to the pathologist for urgent analysis, and they just both really impressed me with how knowledgeable they were and how calm they were. There was just something about the way they were operating that I felt a real kinship with. And so I said to them, I'm really interested in this. And they helped mentor me a little bit, and they spoke to the right people. And I mentioned before, like with dance, I had trouble knowing what the 20 steps would be. I mean, I think these two people were helpful in that they showed me where the steps were. So it's like, if you step here, this is how you do it. And so I wasn't even in a metropolitan city by this stage, but I kind of worked out then how to end up doing pathology. But by that stage, I'd realised that there probably wasn't anything else I wanted to do in medicine.
So not psychiatry, like...
No, I hate it. Look, I continue to be fascinated by human beings, and a passion project of mine is reading and studying and learning about human behaviour, and I attend lots of courses, and I've mentored to a psychologist and psychiatrist and etc. And I think they're amazing people. It just wasn't the right fit for me. Certainly not in the hospital scenario.
Right.
For me, in my limited view of that job in the clinical setting, I saw it as categorising someone as either mad, bad, sad, or glad. And there was a treatment path for all of that. And I just thought that's just so simplistic. Like, these are people that have issues, and that probably is how it's done in a way. But I just thought it just seemed to be so limited for me. And I wasn't sure that I saw a lot of empathy. That was my experience anyway. But pathology I thought was very appealing. And I applied to become a pathologist by ticking the box, but I had no other plan. And my other plan was actually to leave medicine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I never really...
When was this? How far into the game?
I was halfway through my second year of doctoring.
Only okay. So you actually seriously consider... And going back to dance? Or?
No, probably actually to music, composition.
All right.
Yeah, or some kind of performing arts school or something like that. I just really felt like I was on the wrong path.
Sure.
And so I cast my dice into the wind. I don't even know if that's the right term. But I applied for a pathology job, and I was kind of expecting not to get one because I wasn't in the big city where all the pathology training places were. So nobody really knew me in the industry. And I said to myself, if I don't get a job, then it will be a sign, that I'll do something else. And I was offered 2 jobs. And so it's like, well, now I've got to choose one. So it kind of worked out in my... I ended up doing pathology more, as I said, because the job was given to me. But I really wouldn't have stuck at it for 10 years, just beating at the door of the pathologist wanting to do it. I would have said, no, it's a sign that it's not going to work for me.
So how do you feel now that you've been doing it for, I don't know, how long has it been?
Well, I started pathology training in 1999.
Yeah.
So what's that? I don't know, math, 23 years.
Wow.
Something like that, yeah. I think in the field of medicine, it's the best fit for me.
Right.
It matches my introvert, calm demeanour, and I'm not someone who needs, oh, doctor, you saved my life. That stuff does nothing for me.
Yeah.
I don't need my scientific staff to call me doctor.
Yeah.
They know I am, and they call me that because it's a bit more like a work protocol for some reason, but I don't need to hear it. And I really like... So the parts of pathology that I love is it's finding patterns among the chaos. It's essentially I'm an art critic of the medical world where I'm looking at visual images and saying, oh, that's like a Monet, that's like a Renoir, it's going to behave in this way. And no two tumors are the same, just like no two people are the same.
Yeah.
But I do have that good mind that can find patterns and things. So I can, that is something I can do well in my job, is to look at an unknown thing and think, let's think from first principles, what could this be? And so from that point of view, I love the stability. I really love the intellectual aspect. I love that I can help people. It certainly doesn't tick all my boxes as a human being, and I learnt that a bit the hard way, but I'm very grateful for the job. And I've made some modifications in the amount of hours I'll be working in the job very recently, so I'm going to be cutting down to 3 days a week because I want to pursue other parts of me, I guess. But it will be in my life for, I don't know, another 10 years maybe or something like that. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure now that you've done it for so long, it's just so easy to like see things and
yeah. Well, I'd say like 95% of all, once you've been doing something for so long, 95% the same.
Yeah.
And I quite like that. I like that sort of like riding a bike in the high gears, just like and making progress and helping people. And there are some things I don't know, and I dare I say there'd be. Most people in my profession would have the same view. It's like, no one's seen something like this, and so working from first principles is interesting too. So no, it's a part of me that is good for me.
Yes,
it's not all there is to me, but it's definitely something that keeps me off the streets, and it's a very secure, stable industry, which is good for me because I'm not the adrenaline guy.
Right.
I don't have the skills, so I'm learning. I can realize there's a lot to be said for that, but put me in a chaotic scene in the real world, and I'm a little bit like stunned mullet. Yeah, so pathology suits me that there is some predictability there.
Understand.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I know that you've been doing with your pathology job, you've been taking on the role in a communications method.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So this is a great example of serendipity and synchronicity, really, that I am enamored with. And it's this tiny little backstory. Maybe 3 or 4 years into my consulting in the large firm that I work for, I was asked to participate on our big executive committee, which is where people get together and I guess decide how to steer a ship in a certain direction. I guess that's the main thing. And assure we're aligning with our mission statement, etc. And for whatever reason, I felt like I wasn't important enough to be doing this role, and why would someone listen to me? Which is all self-sabotage bullshit, but I was doing that to myself. And then I ended up stepping down from that role. So I just didn't feel like it fitted with where I was at. And right at the tail end of that, my CEO decided to enlist the executive team in this 3-day workshop. And I thought it was going to be about management. And I've never done this, but I almost like faked a sick day, because the thought of going to a management seminar to me was like sticking knitting needles in my eyes or something like that. But I went because I don't like to, rock the boat necessarily. And the psychologist that was training us, the content he was teaching me just made a lot of sense to me. Not only did I understand my own little quirks a lot more, but I understood my mum and my dad and how they're so different, and just people, and even I understood relationships, like romantic and friendship-wise, that had fallen apart, and I understood why that happened, my role in that, the role that other people played, etc. So it all just started to crystallize. And I started reading a lot about it off my own bat. And about a year later, my CEO came to see me and said, we'd like to have this model on board as our kind of, of our intelligence of how we think about human behavior and et cetera. And we would like you to be the in-house trainer. And so this was an incredible gift from the universe, from my CEO, because it placed me in a position where I was actually able to exercise my love for human behavior in a way that I could still maintain the job I had. And because it was coming from the top down, my CEO spoke to people. So it was an official part of my job. So it wasn't like I was trying to get out of my job so I could do this other job. It was all encompassed under the same umbrella.
So what was this method or this philosophy?
Yeah, so the model is called process communication model, PCM for short, and the principles, I guess, really give skills for all the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence. So amazing skills for self-awareness, to understand how I tick, what my strengths are, what my vulnerabilities or opportunities for growth are, how I'm motivated, what I'm motivated by, all those kinds of things, which I guess you could attend lots of seminars, etc. But it just made it also clear. And then self-motivation. How can I motivate myself? How can I charge my batteries? How can I accept that responsibility? How can I tell other people what I need in a way that they can understand? That's 2. Other awareness. How are other people tick? Oh, Derek's a different person to me. How can I look at him objectively and see that? And what clues can he say or do that can tell me the different ways that he would want to be communicated with? Because as it turns out, not everyone wants what I want. And then other motivation. Let's say you're my colleague, or you're my underling, or you're my boss, whatever. Like, how can I charge your batteries? How can I help top up your fuel so that you're effective as well? And all those 4 quadrants are lined up. And for me, PCM is the only model I know that hits all of those 4 right on the money. Some are really good at, placing you in a category. You're this color, or you're these 4 letters, etc. But I'm not sure that they're great at like other motivation or something like that. For me, this is the missing link for all that. And the model works as like I guess it can be predictive about knowing how a certain person is and then how they might behave when they're stressed, but also post-addictive. You can look back on a situation and retrospectively go, oh, now it makes sense why that happened, what can I learn from that? You can listen to the way that people package their information together and understand a lot about what's happening underneath the flip-top lid. So that's sort of the essence of it. And there are some great books written by really, really clever psychologists that are available now on PCM. There's quite a few doctorates that have been, studied.
Is this from America or where?
Yeah. There was a psychologist called Taby Kaler, and he did a lot of his research and studies in the 70s, made a couple of really important publications around that time, and then did a lot of work with NASA to fine-tune some of the intelligence. And then I think from there, pretty soon after that, Bill Clinton heard about this model, and the psychologist became the psychodemographer for Bill's electoral campaigns. And the combination of NASA being involved and then Bill Clinton being involved was like high profile enough for a lot of companies to want the intelligence in an intelligible form that you could attend a seminar, and that's how the seminar ended up being involved, that way you could learn the skills to apply in your interactions with people and in your interactions internally with yourself, I guess.
What would you say, having learned that, what were some of the big ahas that you can share?
Heaps. Yeah. Yes. Just how different we all are. And there's a cartoon where there's 2 people standing and looking at this number that's written in the dirt or whatever, and one of them saying, that's a 6. And the other person is looking at it from the other angle and saying, that's a 9. And they're both refusing to acknowledge that the other person's view is valid. So that's one of the aha moments, is actually there are lots of different ways to look at a situation and extract stuff, and someone else's view of it is as valid for them as my view is of the same situation for me. They may be different, and this plays out in so many ways. Like, I'm sure a lot of relationship conflicts happen because of this. Well, I think having taught 450 people now and listening to them chat in their tea breaks, this is like countless examples of people saying, oh my gosh, now I understand my partner for the first time. Like, so I get that kind of understanding that my view is really subjective. It's not objective, but someone else's view is subjective, but it's also, it seems objective to them as well. Yes. And so just learning how they're seeing the world is the first step to actually connect with someone effectively. Seeing what they want to extract out of the world and understanding that it could be different. And what I love about this model is it's almost like a blueprint you can overlay on any situation. So it it kind of demystifies all that stuff. You can rapidly kind of learn about how someone perceives the world and the kinds of things they will be gleaning out of situations and where the stressful points might be for them. Another aha moment, I guess, was, I'm someone that's always got a lot of energy from solitude. And although my dad was someone that liked solitude, typically people that enjoy solitude don't talk about it because by definition it's solitude, right? And so when I kind of was exercising that part of myself in a big way, I mean, it was always important to me, but in my 30s, it was something I craved, really. I thought there was something wrong with me because not a lot of people were talking about it. And I wondered if I was depressed, and I wasn't, but I felt a little burnt out, I guess, because all I was thinking about was having times to be alone. And learning that that was actually a valid way that people can get energy actually was so enlightening for me. It sort of gave me permission to be myself, I guess. Like, it's okay to get solitude. And it's actually okay to tell people that's what I'm doing. So that was another aha moment. I guess also being aware of my, I'm going to say blind spots, opportunities for growth. Like, unlike you, I'm guessing from what you've told me before, just observing you, I'm just not someone that sees an opportunity, walk by and go, ooh, like, that's what I want, and then go boom, 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 boom. For me, I'll see an opportunity and then think about it for 20 years. And then usually it kind of comes around in my world again, and I'll go, now I'm ready because I've been reflecting about this for 20 years. And then I surprise people about how maybe effective I am at it, but I've actually been thinking about it for 20 years. So that's why I'm good at it at the time. And so I can think of lots of times where opportunities have passed me by, but because I'm so blind to them, I don't see them.
Yeah,
I don't. Classic example, my global CEO of my company, who works in Sydney, met me very briefly when I was down there teaching the side project of PCM to some of the executive leaders there. And he came in and he asked a few people in the room what they thought of the seminar, and I was getting rave reviews, which was lovely. And then this guy said to someone else in the business, how do I get this guy over to Germany? Because we have labs there, right? And then off he left. Now, the thought at the time of me going to train internationally was so exciting.
Yes.
But I didn't even notice the opportunity because I thought, well, he's not said it to me, so he doesn't want me to. Like, it was also nebulous. And maybe about 6 months later, I was like, that was an opportunity to actually say, let's make this happen. Like,
yeah, I'm keen to go.
Yeah, right, because I would have done it, right? And there's so many times where opportunity has been right in front of me and I've not really known how to handle it because it's a blind spot for me, really. And I mean, I think you're more naturally gifted at harnessing those kind of things. So you might be looking at me going, what is wrong with you? But it just doesn't come natural to me.
So what's the strategy now that you're aware of this blind spot? How do you open yourself up and be more receptive to these opportunities when they do show up?
Well, I guess I notice it now. Yeah, okay. Well, my goal is to actually sometimes leap before I think, sometimes, and allow myself that I have enough skills that I can land on a foreign object if I don't land where I think I'm going to land. Like, I'm learning how to do this now. And just like saying yes if it feels good rather than saying, think about it and then taking 3 weeks.
So getting more out of the head.
Yeah, just in the moment. It doesn't come naturally to me, but I can see, times are ticking and there are things that all through my life could have happened had I have grasped the opportunity. Heaps of things.
That's really interesting to me because from our earlier conversation, you came across as someone very intuitive, very knowing, went with your gut in terms of that's what I want to do. But then here we have a situation where things are being presented, but you're not being able to register them.
Yes.
Or if you do see them, your mind gets in the way.
Totally.
How does that dichotomy there work?
Well, yeah, you know how you said to me, when did you decide to go to medical school, etc. I would say I didn't, because I would say my guidance counsellor told me to speak to a psychologist. And then the psychologist told me to speak to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist told me to go to medical school. I didn't decide any of that.
Okay.
It was told to me. I was directed to do those things. Whether I think, I mean, no one said like, it wasn't like a decree, but that is, I took the direction from other people. It wasn't like I saw an opportunity to go to medical school.
Sure.
No, not at all.
Well, I think that's probably just because we were younger then and we give authority to people saying, you probably know better, so I should follow.
Yes, I think it's more than that for me because, I'm so directable. And that's something I've had to dial down too. Like I would have been that kind of kid if someone had said, do this, I would have done it.
Okay.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're very directable, but
Yes.
for something that you absolutely really know, e.g. the dancing, then that's only the only time when you're not directable.
Oh, that's a good. No, I'm very directable, but I'm a mix. So no, I am. I'm super directable. If someone puts something in front of me and says, "Kris, this would be good for you," I'll go, like you've imagined it. Okay, and then I can instantly visualize it and go, I can see what you're seeing, right? So then, yes, basically the carrot will be put in front of me and I'll go, I can see how it can unfold. It does, and I can be very internally motivated to achieve goals, but brand new things that come up quickly, no.
You need time. You need. You either need time or you need someone to be very strong about it.
Yes, so my instinct is to need time. I think that's a myth. I think it is because I think other people get by just fine from doing first. But my way of seeing it is that I need time.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I feel comfortable that way. Yeah. And I like to imagine all the scenarios and workshop things in my mind. And even like deciding part-time, I've been talking about, apologies to all my friends and my work colleagues. I've been talking about this for 2 years.
Okay.
It wasn't like I just said, this is going to be the best thing for me, boom, because I could always work full-time again. Like I needed to walk through that scenario from every angle before I leapt.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. So, opportunities I'm not great at grasping. I'm getting better, and I think it's finding that, I think it was Aristotle talked about the golden mean, where, if you were just the opportunity junkie, you might be considered reckless, where you were just grabbing everything and then just, like, it'd be an exciting life, but there's a crash and burn, I think, inevitable in that scenario. I don't know. But the opposite of reckless might be like, I don't know, someone that has no inertia, that's full of inertia and just doesn't do anything ever. I think for me, it's like, what works best for me? I can see that if something exciting happens, saying, like that's actually going to be a good thing for me. So to answer your very good question you asked me, and I'm sorry I'm taking such a long time, what I'm using with that information is actually starting to make a point of noticing opportunities and just thinking, you know what, let's just do it.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. And then I'll figure it out. And I've done that a few times now where I haven't had a fully formed plan, but I've just leapt on the first step.
Awesome.
Yeah, and this is very new for me, Derek. Like I'd say maybe the last 2 or 3 years, last year or two.
So what's one of those things that you've done?
Now I'm going to reflect. I saw a house up in the hinterlands, which I really loved, and I bought it.
Wow,
and you
great.
might think, oh wow, that's really exciting, Kris. For me,
No, that's good.
But it was, houses don't just sit on the market forever, like the individual house, right?
Yeah.
And they passed me by, and this was something always something I had visualized doing, I guess, but I acted on that much quicker than I normally would have.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's an example. I'm going to park that in my back brain and think if there's anything else, but no. So I was going to say buying my new MacBook Pro. No, but I did think about that for a long time. There aren't going to be many examples because this is a very, very foreign thing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am very aware that I'm open to doing that now, whereas it wasn't. I can't even think of anything I did in my first 30 years, which was in any way relating to grabbing onto an opportunity.
Sure.
Nothing.
Everything was very well thought out.
Yes. Yes. Either that or someone had said to me, you'd be really good at or here's how to do this. And I go, oh, yeah, sure. Okay. But never would I have. No, there were heaps of examples where I can look back in retrospect and opportunities went past me. And I didn't even see them. I can see them now, but I didn't see them then. So that's the next chapter for me, is just to say yes to things that I want to do, not to please people, not doing that. And then just figuring out what happens afterwards.
Now, one thing that did happen very recently, of course, was you had a sabbatical and you indulged back into your dancing.
Yes,
now,
yes.
That's very, you did some great stuff there. So can you tell us about that? Because this is really exciting.
I can. And this is another example of it not being an opportunity, though. When I tell you how it happened, you'll go, oh, yeah, that did fall in your lap. So I was teaching dance in medical school, which I think I said a little earlier. And then when I started my specialty training, I was like, no, this is so much content. I need to be a nerd here. And so I kind of shelved all of my extracurricular pursuits aside from writing music. I kind of kept that up as a passion project. I turned 40 and I was one of those moments where I was in a plane just reflecting about my last 40 years and thinking about who I wanted to be when I was a kid. And I realized my childhood dream of dancing professionally had been and gone. And I wept. And probably, I said earlier I wasn't very good at grieving. Like, I actually did a bit of the grieving of what I was probably supposed to do when I was 16, because I was going to do this thing, I didn't. I actually felt the grief, and I guess it was a nice thing to release. But I kind of accepted that I wasn't going to perform professionally. Around about 6 months before that, I had said to a wonderful, vivacious friend of mine that I was thinking of starting to teach dance again because I realized I was missing it. And so she was the missing link for me, and I was in the right place at the right time, and she connected me with some of my former students, and I was teaching very casually on the side. I found a studio on the internet, random Google search, tap dance studio Brisbane, met this person I'd never met before, heard of before. He gave me the keys, signed the contracts, etc. As it happened, this gentleman, name is Bill, had been contacted by Queensland Ballet to restage a very, very successful British production of Strictly Gershwin for the Australian scene with the Queensland Ballet. So he was going to be the tap choreographer and one of the two main leads, and he needed another male co-star. And I was, I guess, under his nose because I was hiring his studio. I had no idea he was looking for someone. And he said to me, pretty much after I came back from that flight where I was doing feeling the grief, he said to me, this is the thing. And I actually, when he rang me to tell me about the role, I thought he was ringing me to chat about Gershwin music because he knew I played piano.
Oh, right, okay.
Gershwin music,
yes, sure.
So I wasn't really sure why he was telling me about this. And then when he said, I need a male co-star, and would you be interested? And I was just like, because I'm not very good at pouncing on opportunities, I was like, well, I'm going to say yes, but I don't know how it's all going to work because I have this full-time job, and I've never danced professionally, and I'm now 42, 41, I think. But that, I guess, was an example of the opportunity coming by, and I was like, I just have to say yes.
Yeah.
And I have to say yes now. I did some self-sabotage after that. At one point, I was about to ask my workplace for the time off, and before I'd even asked, I told myself it's going to be too difficult for them to spare me for 7 weeks. It would have been for the Australian show. So I won't ask them. And I rang him, and I said, look, I'm so sorry. I have to cancel. And then I put the phone down, and about 5 minutes later, I rang him back, and I said, forget that guy who just said that. I'm self-sabotaging. I haven't even asked. I apologize. I won't do that again. I think I'm just scared of actually living out a childhood dream and it actually happening, and I don't really know what to do with that. And so I just panicked. I won't do that again. And I didn't do that again. And so, yeah.
That was incredibly honest of you to
yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, I like to declare my authentic experience with people so that they know where I'm at. Because it was a huge deal for me to actually live out a childhood dream, which I didn't do. As I said, I kind of stalled when I was 16, and I was suddenly at the age of 42, suddenly going to put on the shoes again.
How old were the other dancers?
Yeah. I was the oldest person in the cast.
Wow.
there were people who were in their early 20s because I used to do this thing where I met people. It was like, oh, let's do a fun thing. Like, what were you doing in like 1986? And they were like, I wasn't born then. So I'm like, I hate this game. And I was the oldest person in the entire cast. There was a retired principal dancer of the Australian Ballet who was now working with Queensland Ballet as a teacher observer, and he was in the cast as like he came out of retirement to do a role. And he was a lovely guy, and he would chat to me side room of rehearsals, and I used to lament a bit about feeling out of water. No one knew I wasn't a professional dancer. That's not true. The director from London didn't know I wasn't a professional dancer. So I felt like I was like incognito, and I thought I was going to be discovered at any moment and kicked out. And I was chatting to him about this, and he said, no, Kris, you don't have mileage. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, yes. So he said, yes, I'm in my 30s, but my joints are hatted. You don't have mileage. You're good. You don't have dancer 42-year-old joints because you didn't do anything for 14 years. So I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And so I kind of like, well, that really helped me because I did feel a little bit like I'm like the grandfather in the company. No one said that to me. This was just my thing. Yeah.
But your joints and everything was so...
Well, in theory, I did, yes, it was... I have a friend who owns a professional sports medicine practice, like a masseuse, et cetera, and I was seeing him as well to help me weekly. But it was a wonderful experience. Living out a childhood dream was incredible for me.
Yes.
I don't know if all kids have a childhood dream like I did, but it was all I thought about really was dance, music, performing, writing music, choreographing a show, like having a dance studio. Like I was very much focused on this. And so to be immersed in the industry, to not really audition, I just plopped in my lap. And it was, the other amazing thing was the role required tap dance, which was what I was teaching, but it was very balletic in its artistry. It was basically like 1920s, the golden age of Hollywood, kind of almost like that kind of movement. It needed a lot of poise, and I could rely on my intense ballet training for that to carry my body, and I could tell it suited me. Like, if you wanted me to have ripped jeans and my hat backwards and dance on some rubbish tins, I could make the sound, but I would look a bit daft, I think, because I'm just not that kind of guy. But if put me in a tails and some Gershwin music in the background, and tell me to try and look sophisticated, like I can hit that nail on the head. So it really was the perfect role for me at a time where I had long service leave, where I wasn't too old, and it was one of the highlights of my life, absolutely. Definitely.
No, I remember seeing you were on TV. I remember seeing you posting up stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So that would have been very exciting. You're like all over on the media.
Well, I'm quite an introvert. So that was all of a surprise to me, like being interviewed by Channel 7 and the ABC was doing a story as well. Like I was a bit like, okay, we're doing this. Like despite that I was performing in front of, over 2,000 people a night, I'm not someone that's like, yeah, I want to be seen. Come on, world, look at me. Like, I'm not like that at all. In fact, I don't even remember the first performance. I think I remember standing side stage feeling really comfortable that I had done this for myself. But as soon as I went on stage, I was on autopilot and I don't remember anything about it at all. It's true. I've seen the footage. I'm like, oh, wow, it's good. I don't remember it.
Lucky, they filmed it.
But I didn't really, I wasn't like, people are seeing me. In fact, I would say that was something I had to overcome. Yeah, I probably had to accept that was okay for me to be seen. I think that's one of the reasons I didn't pursue dance when I was 16. I think it was a self-sabotage thing. I think I kind of felt like, Kris, you're supposed to hide. You're supposed to just be in the background. In a way, that was sort of percolating in the background, I think. So I kind of pushed through that show.
Well,
that's great for my personal growth. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now you actually won some awards for it as well, right?
I was nominated. There's an industry, so I knew nothing about this industry, but there's the Australian Dance Awards are held each year, and I was nominated for Australia's most outstanding professional dancer that year.
That's amazing.
I didn't win,
but that's amazing. It's amazing to be nominated.
Yes,
That's crazy.
Oh, because I saw the list of people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these are people that I see. Like these are people that, because I like going to watch shows, and like I know these people.
Right.
It was incredible to see my name there, and because I felt like I was doing a good job, but because I had never performed professionally, I really didn't know how I'd go. And for me, it was actually good for two reasons. It helped me validate that it was okay to accept that I did the role, and it was okay. Mm. And coincidentally, the week that I received that nomination, I had been asked by the UK director to do the same role for the US premiere, and I received again another example where I said yes straight away.
Oh, you did that? Fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm glad you did.
I did that. Yeah. I did have 11 months to prepare for the performances after I said yes, but yes, I said yes straight away, which is unusual for me, but I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when I said yes, and eventually they needed to get international, I needed to get a, what do they call it, an alien visa for a specialist individual or something like that to justify them not employing an American. Right. Because, they don't have tap dancers over there. Right. So, that's irony, clearly. So I had to document that I had some kind of award or had been nominated for an award. And they said, for an example, like an Oscar, a Tony, a Grammy. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm a medical specialist that looks under a microscope all day. I ain't got any of that stuff. And I almost thought, well, this is the end of the road for me. I'm not going to get my visa. And then I was nominated for the award. And so I could say, yes, I have been nominated for an Australian equivalent, I guess, in the bubble of dance in Australia. So yes, not only did the nomination say to me, Kris, you're enough to do the role. It helped me more than enough, maybe, I don't know, but it then helped me tick a box for the immigration interview I had to have in Sydney to get my visa.
Feels like it's all about ticking boxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess some things have to be about ticking boxes, right? Because I can't just say, oh, the UK director thinks I'm good. Like, is that enough? Like, well, I don't know what would have happened if I had said I can't fulfill that criteria. Yeah. But it was very clear that was what was required. And that's when I thought, oh, this is silly. Like, what am I doing, Kris? I'm trying to pretend to be someone I'm not. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you did that. You did all that stuff for that Strictly Gershwin. So yes. I would be thinking that you would probably had more opportunities having such an outstanding debut.
I have, but I wouldn't have noticed it.
Oh, yeah. You think that they were presented, but you just didn't pick up on them.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not. And also, I would definitely do another show. I would love to do the same show again. I would love serious listening. I would love to do this. I would love to do that show again. I think it needs to be seen again. I adore the show. It's amazing. There's been talks of an Australian tour, sort of murmured.
Okay, nice.
I would be very, very open or keen to do that. And when I did the show in the US, the company that I worked for there, they said in the words where we'd love to have you back if we do it again. So, I'm open to do it, definitely. What I learnt about the industry is that I love stability and it does not give that.
No.
Yeah. And so one of the gifts for me from stepping out of the world of medicine was appreciating it when I came back. Yeah. It felt so strange going back, Derek. So it'd only been 2 months, but a lot happened in that 2 months.
I can imagine, yeah.
And as I've discovered, the artistic world, it's very emotional, which suits me just fine, like lots of hugs and people talking about feelings, which is I'm all about and whatever. So I was kind of almost like back home. Yeah. And then I remember coming back to work. And a lot of my colleagues saw the show and some of my surgical referrers and stuff, which was amazing. But I remember someone that saw the show, it's a colleague of mine, when I got back to work, said to me, oh, what time is your your frozen section that you're doing with that surgeon this afternoon. Like, that's the first thing they said to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's right. We're back in logic land where we kind of talk about time structure and hitting, like all that kind of stuff, like analysis kind of world. I kind of left that for a bit. And when I came back into it, I felt so strange going back to it. Yeah. But it gave me an appreciation for the stability of my job. And I am someone that likes structure and predictability, I guess because I'm not good at flying on whatever the term is, flying by the seat of my pants.
Right, okay.
Or, I'm not just good at like, I'll just plot myself in an unusual situation and adapt. I'm not good at that.
I think maybe you just haven't had enough positive experiences of succeeding in that situation. I don't think it's...
but you're saying it because it comes more easily to you.
Possibly.
Wow,
but I do think it's got to do with...
practice makes perfect
that has an element to it.
Definitely, yeah. Oh, and I mean, I've chosen one of the professions in medicine which is the most controlled.
Right.
Like, most other professions would have patients that want to be seen at a certain time at least, usually. But mine are just sitting in glass jars or, sitting under the microscope. And I kind of, there are deadlines in vague terms, but they're not waiting for me at that time. So I can sort my own structure out there. There's no reason to need to adapt.
Sure.
Because I can roster myself, which I'm good at doing, and structure my own time. So in my job, I don't need to be very adaptable. And I would say a lot of my colleagues, one of the reasons they choose pathology because they're also not adaptable. And I see this because if there's something unexpected that comes up, it's almost like the world ceases to exist for a moment. Is that whereas people who are very adaptable, it's like, right, let's do it. Let's get it done. Yeah, no, I don't work with those people. So, which is fine. Like some character strengths are needed in some industries in spades, and some aren't. Yeah.
Let's go back to the topic of self-sabotage, because that to me is very interesting. Especially for someone like yourself, who obviously you have excelled in multiple areas, yet you still feel, or you still face this self-sabotage.
Yes.
What is it that you've learned through PCM or just through your own personal experience?
Yeah, thank you for asking. This is a bit of a passion project of mine within the model that I teach. So I've read a lot about the concept of self-sabotage and spoken to my mentors, the psychologists who develop and propagate this model. And I would say for myself, some of the self-sabotage that I've overcome are as follows. I used to have a problem showing anger because I was worried that people would reject me. And so I would sabotage situations by not telling them when my boundaries had been crossed. Repeatedly, I used to do that.
Do you have any specific examples?
I mean, some of them are kind of like murky, kind of like relationship stuff. But let me just say, a boundary of mine might be. I'm going to speak in abstract.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Kind of protect other people.
Understand.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. So let's say I have a house and it has a fence, which is a boundary, and it's my property.
Yeah.
If I don't recognize my own boundaries, I will then allow anyone to come and build on my land. Yeah. And I won't say no because I don't want them to be angry with me.
Right.
And so I allow people to encroach on me. And because I don't say no, they don't know any differently.
How was that self-sabotage?
Because it's actually okay to say no to protect my boundaries about who I am. I think it's like, for me, it's really important to be able to say, an example, like I'm gay. I don't talk about it forever because it's like my hair is this color and whatever. But if someone made a homophobic joke, it would be self-sabotage of me just to accept that.
Right.
But defending my boundary would be to say, I feel angry that you've said that because you're saying something about me as a person that's not okay. Can you stop joking like that with me?
Sure.
So that we can continue our professional relationship or our friendship.
Yep.
Like, that's what I mean by sabotage in that way of actually not defending my boundaries.
Okay.
That's an example of a boundary. And a boundary might be I don't want someone to belittle me in front of people.
Yeah, I get you.
But if I don't know how to defend that boundary, I allow it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important thing. I had a conversation recently about people just not being aware of when they are being violated.
Yes.
So that's first
Yes.
thing,
Yes.
not even understanding that that's happening or that is a violation.
And I've trained people who
Yeah.
didn't even know that a boundary existed.
Exactly,
And they
exactly.
can look back and think, oh my gosh, and that's why I have been a doormat, or insert, or, people took on my money, or just insert whatever kind of boundary is relevant for them. Gosh, dare I say, like I put up with a severely abusive relationship, like
Right.
as someone might say, that could be a boundary.
Yep.
Just over time, just gets encroached upon, and if someone doesn't have the skills to defend their boundary, then
That's a very big thing. Defense, awareness, and defense.
yeah, like it's okay to say no, and the world won't cease to exist. It's okay to say that's not okay with me, and then strategize about. No, I mean, it's not then to walk away and abandon the friendship or abandon the relationship, but just to explain why it's not okay. A person's boundaries are their own, and one of the things I really strongly believe is that the best gift of love you can give someone is tell them where your boundaries are, so they know how to sail in your sea.
How, given that this is kind of for many people is very murky, knowing what those boundaries are, what kind of processes can people try and get more clear on what that boundary is, where that fence line is?
Do you remember before how I said like I wasn't very good at noticing opportunities?
Right.
Some people do not know how to do this, and so I don't think I can just say learn where your boundaries are. But they'll say no. But if I tell someone, that they might reject me.
Right.
Like they will have a defense for this. If they don't know how to defend their boundary, their defense will be to have none, so that no one will be angry with them. Because the thought of like being rejected by someone else could be so painful for someone. So I guess my suggestion is, by me saying this, and if someone says, "Oh, this is resonating with me," I'm feeling murky. Like when I'm hearing Kris talk about having a boundary and someone and being afraid of getting rejected if I say a boundary, then a good strategy would be to find a therapist that can help you, because it's actually a useful life skill, and not everyone can do it. And some people are taught as kids not to be angry.
Yeah.
And
Or
so
that's bad to be angry.
it's bad.
So they stuff it down.
Go to your room and come back when you've got a smile on your face. Daddy doesn't like it when you're angry. Like all sorts of things that you can hear, or it's unsafe. Like heaven forbid for a child to experience severe, like damaging kind of punishment if they show anger. And they learn, oh, I have to suppress anger. Now, please, there's a huge difference by this type of anger where I say, Derek, this is hypothetical, right? Derek, that's not okay with me. I'm sorry. This is my stuff. And explain da-da-da-da-da. Is it okay if we proceed, you knowing that about me now? That's the anger I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, you mother. I mean, that other behavior is pathological, and we can talk about that some other time maybe. But yeah, I'm talking about just actual authentic displays of where boundaries are and saying, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not okay with me. This other behavior is okay with me. Yeah.
So you mentioned, that's a great idea. I mean, speaking to a therapist. And I think it's good. What I find now is that people are more open or more accepting of speaking to a therapist. Of course, like in America, it's very commonplace.
Yeah.
But I think there's still a lot of stigma attached to it.
Yeah. It could also be a life coach or a counselor. Like it doesn't I guess someone that has a really good friend who can probably, if you're in a situation where you realize this is something you need to do, your friend has probably seen you suffer because of it. It's like, oh my God, what is Samantha doing? Samantha's hypothetical. What is she doing again? Like there she is again, another relationship. She's again the doormat.
Yeah.
She's doing all his laundries, whatever, just so he doesn't leave her. Like she's just so worried about him being upset that she's not saying anything, and she's a nervous wreck, and she's starting to not take care of her appearance again. She's doing her Samantha thing again, so that kind of gift of friendship to say, I see you and this is not you healthy. Like, what can I do to help you? Do you want to practice saying no?
Right.
With me?
Well, actually, that would be a defense strategy.
Yeah. Yes.
Are there a specific number of types of strategies?
Yeah. I mean, there are things you can learn to, like it could be a formula to say, I think the best way to express that kind of boundary is to talk about your own experience. If I have a boundary and I perceive you breached it hypothetically, and I said, you, That's not going to work. You'll get defensive or implode or explode potentially. And so if I just talk about my experience, when I experienced something, that's the first step.
Yeah.
I felt anger, or I felt pissed, or I felt that's not okay. Because, and then I can insert what it is about me that makes me me. What I want is describe what I want, where my boundaries respected. Is that okay with you?
Okay.
What can someone say? Like, I haven't attacked you. I mean, they can say no, and then you can say, I feel sad about that because this is important to me and I've told you that, and I understand that you at this time can't give that to me. So we'll have to go our separate ways as a friend, or what, like it could come to that. It's still healthy.
Yep.
I'm not like slashing your tires or, or bad mouthing you around. I'm telling you why that is. Yeah. So that kind of formula, when I experience something I feel, and then don't pussyfoot around with this feeling. Don't say I feel, just say I feel angry. Just say it and get through it. Some people can't say that word. I've trained them. It's really interesting. When I experience something, I feel angry because, and talk about me, what I want is this. Can you give that to me? Or can we talk about how that could work? Yeah.
No, I think that's really useful.
Yeah.
It's a very good...
It's a big thing. I mean, even like sometimes children speaking to their parents, like adult children, I mean, and parents who don't know how to stop parenting, who don't want to because of their own issues, when... This is, again, hypothetical. Like, when I experience you coming over to my house and rearranging all the furniture, I feel angry because what I experience is being a child again. And the message I'm getting is you don't think I can take care of myself. What I want is to be able to live in my house the way I want and for you to love me because of that. Is that okay? And you might have to go through this loop. Oh, yes, but I was just... yes, I know you're justifying why, but but I'm just saying it's not okay with me. And that's the key, to be open about your experience, to explain why, and then to be persistent, to actually not cave. Because if it's a genuine boundary, it's your boundary.
It's really interesting that that this kind of essential type of communication is never taught. Or
except in my seminar.
Yes, hasn't been taught. Like, I mean, I really feel that this stuff needs to be shared, or there needs to be communication 101 in school.
Yes.
Talking about all this stuff, like how to express grief, how to deal with it.
That's another one of the authentic emotions, like a boundary. And yes, exactly. So the good news is that this isn't the only model that teaches this, but PCM is taught in schools by some school teachers. There are schools that are set up with that as their philosophy. There's a couple of trainers I know who teach this model, who teach teachers.
Yeah.
And God bless him, there's a guy in Sydney who does this for free, where he goes to like western suburbs of Sydney and does seminars with kids and then parents. It's not compulsory, but he just says, this is my gift I can give you.
Yeah, it just boggles me. Why isn't this kind of stuff just... I mean, we talk about teaching languages, we talk about doing all this other stuff. But why hasn't this been like legislated? And you know what I mean?
Derek, I love the way you're thinking.
I mean, I just feel it should be a part of the normal curriculum.
It's probably better than learning how to integrate find the area under the curve.
Exactly.
In math.
Exactly.
Which I really liked. But I think, these things are called soft skills. I don't like that term.
Right.
Because I think they're essential.
Yeah. Can rename it. We'll call them essential skills.
Yeah. Well, they are. They're actually survival skills, dare I say. If we go back to tribes, what are the benefits for a tribe to be able to defend their boundary? I mean, it's easy to answer, so they can exist, so they can continue to grow, so that their stuff isn't taken against their will. There's lots of reasons why a tribe would want to protect their boundaries. Dare I say, Australia has been protecting their boundaries with the enemy, which is coronavirus.
Right.
So I mean, there are reasons to defend the boundaries on a big scale. So too for an individual. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm even thinking about 15-year-old girl dating who can't say no to her boyfriend.
I mean
that's another example because I don't want him to reject me.
Yeah.
I mean that's a stereotype, but gosh, it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's heaps of examples of where people are the pain of being rejected is so severe that they cannot imagine saying no in situations where they perceive that the no might mean rejected. And that can also invite manipulation.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, then I'll reject you. I mean, it can be as base as that.
Yes.
So, yeah, I agree. Essential skills such as defending boundaries, learning how to grieve. My model teaches 6. There may be more, but it's the reason that there are 6. Well, I guess it kind of aligns so well with the 6 different parts in us that it teaches as well. So it kind of like, this part of you, this is the essential life skill. This part.
Which are the 6 parts that the model has?
Yeah, so it kind of divides. I won't use the model terminology, but it divides us into a feeling part, a thinking part, a believing or opinion part, a reflective part, the explorative, reacting to life part, and the action-based, just get in and do it first part. And then with each part of us, we kind of learn about an essential skill that can be very useful to navigate that. I mean, like, for example, if I just stick to the feeling part of us, if we're so concerned about the feeling of being rejected, we might not be able to have a boundary.
Right.
And so we kind of say it's actually the feeling of anger is actually the missing link here. If you say, I feel angry because of the boundary being breached, and I want to continue a relationship with you, and this is what works for me, blah 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 blah, like that's very useful. So yes, defending a boundary in a healthy way is I believe now, having lived my life but also teaching, an essential skill. And I love your term. You can trademark that. Essential skills.
Not my term. But,
okay.
I mean, we made it up there. We're cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So there's obviously, we could probably just have a whole session just on that.
Yeah, right.
But let's move on to just one last thing before we call it a day for today, because we've had a very, very full conversation here.
Yeah, we've gone in all sorts of directions, which I love. That's
it's been very, very fascinating. One thing that I have been speaking with you about just on messaging has been about procrastination.
Yes,
right. And purely the reason why I thought about you was because what I was saying at the beginning, because I saw you as a very disciplined, action-orientated person. And I was curious as to think what your perspective was on procrastination.
Yes. Okay.
Whether you procrastinate.
Well, I have procrastinated lots of times in my life, but it's usually been because I haven't been able to have one of the essential skills.
Right.
So I might have procrastinated about telling someone why I was upset with them.
Sure. But that was because of the rejection.
Or I might, So there, or I might have procrastinated on seizing an opportunity because I was too afraid to leap without a plan. Right. So that's another example of procrastinating. I'm not sure that procrastination is the same as it's not the opposite of motivated. I think demotivation or burnout is the opposite of motivated. I think procrastination is a double-edged sword, and depending on the situation, can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah. And so let's say an example of good procrastination might be, choosing who you marry. Like, not just going, the first person that says you're cute.
Right.
And go, let's get married. Maybe it's a good thing to actually think about the future and what that might mean. And I don't know, I don't know why that example came to my head, or I'm deciding to buy a car. Like, some people would say, Kris, just shut up with your stories about procrastination and buy the car. But maybe it's good to think, well, what features do I want?
Sure.
What do I want? What do I want from my car? Do I want to look good in it? Do I want it to be fuel economical? Do I want the sound system? Do I want, and think, and so that people might think that's procrastinating because you're not buying a car, but you're actually delaying the decision because you're wanting more information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. I think what you asked me is how do I procrastinate?
Or whether you do or not.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
I just want to go back to your thing. You're saying that you don't think procrastination is the opposite of motivation.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So what would be what did you say?
I think the opposite of motivation is almost like burnout. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's how I see it. I think demotivation or burnout is the opposite of being motivated, but I think procrastination. I think it's important to think about: is it a problem? Like, is it a problem? Einstein took 10 years to discover his theory of E equals mc squared.
Right.
he was reflecting about it for a decade whilst working as an office clerk. Was he procrastinating? I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
people could say,
I wouldn't
you
call
weren't
that
publishing papers, so you're procrastinating. But he was like,
Yeah, he was.
the idea
he was-
the idea didn't come to him until 10 years. And so, yes, his output in the scientific community was zero. And someone might have said that's procrastinating, but he just wasn't in the position to have thought of the theory. So,
What about in terms of, I think most people would maybe think of procrastination in terms of, say, habits they want to pick up.
yeah, okay.
Say like, I want to exercise, I want that six pack, I want to look great, whatever.
I guess, so I hear you. And yet they don't have it.
And they don't do it, and they put it off.
Yeah, so...
Waking up early. I mean, simple things. Do you, like one thing, for example, something that I'm working on right now, because one of my problems is I try and take on too much too quickly, right? Okay. So I need to slow down and just do one thing at a time. But one thing that I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I procrastinate on that I'm slowly working down and ticking off, some of the initial ones, and there's still some that I'm still working on, such as, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Reviewing my day. Like, I'd like to be doing that every day.
Yeah. Oh, well, I know what I would do in that situation, but I don't
know. What would you do? Tell me.
Look, honestly, it's because I like to structure my time and plan. I would actually have a schedule.
Right.
Like, if it's that important to you that you do it, set an alarm for 8 p.m.
Yeah, and just make sure you do it. Don't get distracted by...
Well, yes, yeah, okay. So this is going to be easier for me because
Why is
that? because I'm so internally motivated. So I don't notice external distractions so much.
Yeah, but
I just don't.
I am learning that right now.
Yeah,
like I'm just finding like I've been a lot more focused in the last week or so.
Yeah. I guess. Well, what would motivate you? Would it be public acclaim? Like if you had someone you respected, or thousands of people on social media knowing that you were doing it, would that motivate you? You're like, I'm doing it,
Yeah,
like,
no, see, I think for me, what motivates me more is not letting people down. And that's what I've used to get. That's
good.
That's a strategy I've used in the past to get me to do stuff.
Yeah,
and that's what I've discovered like works for me.
Yes. Yeah. So this is very, very good. I think you've nailed how to motivate yourself because you know what will give you a big battery charge about your sense of duty.
Yeah, exactly.
This is all in the model I teach. But honestly, once you know what to listen for, people will just tell you.
Sure.
Yeah, and so. Knowing that if your commitment is so that someone else is being protected or is being advanced in some way or whatever, then that probably will be all the motivation you need. Like if you set that commitment to them, even if you
set it up that way.
If you tell them and make that pact with them, oh man, then it means falling on your own sword. Like I think that might be another step where you're going to actually say to them, this is really important to me that I do this. I'm committing to it. And I'm saying it out, and tell them why. I'm saying it out loud because I am someone who does go shiny thing sometimes. But I don't want to do that with this thing because it's really important to me. And also, if they know it's important to you, you could say to them, can you check in with me in a week? Because I will really enjoy saying what I've been doing about this because that way I can show how dedicated I've been. So if you check in with me and I'll say, I'm really proud of myself. I did these things, and I'm like, I am halfway there. Yep. And then they go, oh, thanks, man, or whatever it is, or it might even be, oh, this is so good. And then so you get that kind of validation that your purposeful work has been meaningful to them. And so in that situation, it sounds like if you get some kind of feedback that the work you're doing is purposeful and that someone else is noticing that, then that would be a big motivation for you, I think.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just trying to work out the message that the message using your model is really finding out
find your own motivation.
What is it that really drives you?
Be really honest about why do you want to do it? What is the gain? What are you wanting to do? I mean, in general terms, is your motivation so people like you? Is your motivation so that you can say to yourself, I ticked it off the list? I'm a competent human. Is my motivation that someone's recognizing me, that I'm making a difference, which I think is your thing, that I'm actually making a difference to them, or I'm showing this dedication,
What do you think is most holding most people back from your observation? For simple things, you know, like what I'm saying, like exercising or eating less or eating more healthy or
Oh gosh, I'm
doing housework.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure if I'll be able to generalize it. Let me think about that.
Or just what the top 3 type of things that stop people? Is it the fact that they're just not very clear about the importance, the why, the importance,
yes,
and
yeah. Well, I wish I had reread this just before I came, but there's I think example was people quitting smoking and their motivation, and I think that there's like understanding what it is and where the block is really important. So I guess that's the thing. I don't know if there's one thing, but actually learn what the block is and actually just be the adult and just think about what is stopping me. Be brutally honest.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, it's okay to fail. So just be brutally honest and say, I'm not succeeding where I want to be. Why isn't this working? For cigarette smoking, for example, some people just don't think it's that harmful. And so they want to stop, but they just don't buy into that it causes cancer. And so there's no real motivation there for them.
Yeah, that's not going to help. That's not
no, you know what I mean? So that's not going to motivate them by having a photo of like someone's face falling off because they don't think it's going to happen to them.
And also just the fact that it's always there, then it just slowly lessens the effect.
Yeah. Or if, you know, let's say some people don't want the cough that they have, but some people are like, oh, it doesn't bother me so much. So that's not going to motivate them if they're coughing. They don't care. Or the cost. But if they've got money coming out of every which way, then that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a motivator. Like, what is the motivator? Is it so my breath doesn't smell? I mean, sorry, excuse me if you're smoking. I mean, this is just an example I've plucked out of the air. Like, it's a common thing that people try and fail to give up, right? And then people do succeed. So what is your motivation? What is your block? What is holding you back? What are you afraid of letting go of? I think actually that might be the thing now that I'm thinking about it. Just acknowledge what is the thing I'm not prepared to let go of. Am I not prepared to let go of the next exciting opportunity that comes along? Or am I not prepared to let go of being distracted? Because I just love being distracted, right? I just love shiny things. Or am I not prepared to let go of the possibility I might fail? Or am I not prepared to let go of the fact that people might notice me, which may have been why I hesitated with the dance thing for so long, you know. What is it that I'm really afraid of letting go of? And then think, which is more important?
All right.
The letting go of, to do the thing, or to actually stay safe. I don't think it's right to force someone to break free of all these things unless they're ready.
Absolutely.
But acknowledge what it is you're ready to let go of. I mean, for some people, coming out as, you know, their sexuality, it's letting go of how they think they're supposed to be. You know, just letting go of that. It's like, you know what, I'm at this point now where being authentically me is much more important than clinging on to pretending I'm someone else.
Yep.
And so I can let go of that. So I think that's it. What am I not letting go of? And then just give yourself permission to let yourself let go of it if you want to. And if not, then, you know, for housework, it might be, I'm not prepared to let go of the fact it takes up my time. So I'm not going to clean my room. It's like, okay, well, then you're going to have a messy room, right? There you go.
Make peace with having a messy room.
Yeah, but then, you know what? I'm actually prepared to let go of that time now. I'm actually not going to watch TV.
Yeah.
Because actually having a clean room will be better for me because I can find my staff and I might want to have people come in my room now and not just close the door, don't go in there. So, you know what? So I think that's it. Like, what is it that I'm having trouble letting go of? And then just look at that and say, why? Why? Look for evidence of sabotage there. And then think, well, am I going to be brave today and let go of that thing and just see what happens? Could be a whole new
That's
year.
a good question, I think. Leading it with, am I going to be brave today?
Yeah.
That puts a positive spin on the whole thing.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And you don't have to face the dragon with the arm, without the armor, but you don't have to do that. But you could say, well, am I going to be?
Yeah.
And then, then you can ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen here? Yeah. I mean, for little things like, why am I not unpacking the dishwasher, like I said? But it might be because it's just fucking boring. But am I going to let go of the boredom? Or can I strategize? Or what can I do? Can I put on some fun music? Or can I make a pact with a friend and say, I'm going to call a friend who's fun and have my earpods in my ear while I unpack the dishwasher and say, I'm doing that really shitty, boring thing again. Please help me laugh. And then just, have a chat, whatever. And that way, before you know it, you're unpacking dishwashers.
Fantastic.
And you're actually enjoying it. I don't know. That wasn't very slick, but that's my thing, I think.
No.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of looking at it, different perspective.
Yeah.
And you never know. I mean, there's obviously always different strategies and different things, and it's going to work, as you said, very personal. So
Yeah. I mean, and another example would be like attending a seminar that's to talk about different strategies and motivation. I'm not a big fan of someone that works at what works for them and then writes a book because that works for them. I'm not sure that that's good. But learning lots of different strategies and which one of these applies, I think that's magic. Because you go, you know what, that's how my brain works. If I declare to the world that I'm going to do something, I won't lose face. So that can be my strategy.
Sure.
Or if I can find meaning and purpose in it and recognize that I'm making the world a better place, that's my motivation. So I think something like that, which gives you that different ways that people might be motivated, and think that's me, that one, not this other one. That's going to be bullshit for me. Find your own.
Very valid.
Yeah, be honest about yourself and what will work for you. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so let's. Is there anything else you want to share?
Oh my goodness, no.
We've gone through a lot.
I guess I would want to share that I've really enjoyed you asking me these questions. And I haven't really, as you know, we didn't have a script.
No,
at all.
It's all casual conversation.
Yeah, but I've really enjoyed the journey that you've taken me on, I guess. And I also want to share that thank you for recognizing me, that you saw me as disciplined. I can assure you I had a fear of failure, so that might have been part of what, back then, I don't know, so that might have been part of the reason why I came across like that. So beware of what's under the flip-top lid. It's not always glowing. But I was that kind of kid, and I used to look back on you and think, wow, that guy is so gregarious, and he made things happen, and these celebrities are, coming to Brisbane, and Derek knows these people, and I'm like, I don't like that. You're so different from me in that regard. And I really admired you. I mean, you just had that skill of being able to connect people and just land in situations. I just thought that was so cool.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. So and it's good. Work to your strengths.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yeah.
If you have, I don't know whether you have a bumper sticker on your car.
I don't.
But if you had one, what would be the message?
Yeah, something like be yourself. Oh, no, I know what it'd be. You are enough.
Excellent.
So that whenever someone reads it,
yes,
they can just see the statement.
Yes.
And go, okay, that might be confronting for some people who don't want to buy into that, but everyone is enough.
Yeah.
Without achievements, without anything.
Absolutely.
You're just enough. Just the way you are, and whatever else you want to do, just go out and make it happen. But no, it's you are enough. That's my message. That's my bumper sticker.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, Kris, it's been amazing time here having a chat with you.
Thank you.
If people
Likewise.
if people would like to find or get in contact with you, what's the best way they can find you?
I'm pretty new to social media, but I do have an Instagram account, which is one word. I think it's all one word. Vampur, VAMPURR, as in the vampire cat. I don't know. Long story.
Right. Yeah. Kris loves cats. We didn't even get onto that topic. That'd be a whole other podcast.
So there's a little thing about that. So it's a Vampur. I may be slow to respond because I'm not someone that pounces on opportunity straight away, but I do respond. So that's one way. Also, I mean, you can email me, so I can just rattle off my email address if you want.
Go ahead.
So probably the best one is just my name with an underscore. So KRIS_Kerr @hotmail.com. I mean, it's just one of the many emails I have, but that one will get to me. So it's an oldie but a goldie.
You still hang on to that Hotmail.
Well, I mean, it's just my name, and I mean, I have other ones, but that would be where I'd look for stuff like that. So
that could be a new question. Who here's got a Hotmail address?
Yeah, it's old school, man. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much again, Kris. It's been an absolute pleasure having you over.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks very much.
Wow. I think you'll agree Kris shared some really powerful messages. Would love to hear your comments and thoughts. Feel free to drop a message on the podcast page for this episode at livinglit.life. Of course, you can also find a bunch of extras, including a full transcript, show notes, photos, videos, and links to what we talked about as well as how to get in contact with Kris. Really appreciate this early support during the startup phase. And if you liked it, please consider supporting by subscribing so you don't miss future episodes when they drop. Speaking of which, you definitely don't want to miss the next episode when I chat with Jason Chan. Many of you may know him from his Green Power Ranger days, but he actually has been consistently delivering great work since then, including producing a series for an online platform in Singapore that crossed over to TV because of its great quality, What Do Men Want?, a web series, Perfect Girl, that eventually got picked up by Netflix, and most recently co-writing, acting, and co-directing a feature-length film that has become the longest-running film in Singapore history, Jamami Tofu. He also shares his creative process and discovering his real-life superpower, plus the value of grit and his latest venture, a tech startup. In addition, we also talk about his early beginnings and aspirations to be a professional dancer, how he successfully pivoted from being a doctor to an actor. Okay, I know what you're thinking. What's with all the dancing doctors? Look, I promise you, it's just a coincidence. No more, I promise, after this one. We dive deep and cover so much, nearly 3 hours of listening goodness that will humor you, enlighten, and inspire you. Can't wait to share it. I'll see you then. This has been a livinglit.life production, copyright 2021, all rights reserved. To join me as a guest on the show or for sponsorship and partnership inquiries, please email hello@livinglit.life. And don't forget, stay lit. See ya.